Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Nino Vreski, and this is World of Politics, the political podcast of the American University in Bulgaria. It is a project created by the Political Science Club and the Documentary Club of the university. We will discuss different political topics and invite interesting guests that will provide us meaningful insights. The topic of today is related to Bulgaria and its future after the recent elections. Our guest today is a renowned figure not only on campus but internationally. She is the Provost at the AUBG, professor in the Department of Politics. Our guest often gives lectures in the best universities around the world and holds a doctorate degree from the University of Pittsburgh, USA. She even teaches politicians about the fundamentals of policymaking and public policy. Please welcome Provost Emilia Zankina.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Good luck with your initiative. I'm honored to be your first guest.
Thank you very much. So after the elections, we again see fragmented parliament. This time with two big parties, GERB and the Socialists, and three smaller ones that passed the threshold of 4%. Can we see unity and compromise in such parliament?
The elections were not a surprise. We did not expect any party to win a majority. And probably few parties win absolute majorities in parliamentary systems. It is very usual for parliamentary systems to have two major parties hold about 60% of the vote and 2/3 of the seats in parliament, which is the case here. But this is only at first glance. If we look further down, what we notice is that we have a combination of unlikely partners. We have a center-right party that has been qualified as populist, at least when it's originated, and certainly retains this populist note. We have a social democratic party that traces back its origin over 100 years and to the communist period. We have an ethnic Turkish party, we have United Nationalists, and we have our brand new populist party, which is always happening in Bulgarian elections. There is some new populist that joins parliament. It was Barekov before, it was Rezese and Yane before that. So in terms of patterns, it's not unexpected. Also, what is not unexpected is that coalition building would be very difficult. What we'll expect to see, of course, is that the GERB party is given the mandate and they're trying to form a government, and the only partner that they can approach is the United Nationalists and the new populist party. So they could either have a minimum winning coalition or an oversized coalition. They have opted out for just forming a coalition with the nationalists, and this would be okay if it were another party. But the nationalists have very few touching points with the program of GERB. They in fact have more points in common with the Social Democrats, the BSP, because of their welfare chauvinism. So we're likely to see supposedly a center-right government that would be blackmailed constantly and on every issue by nationalists who are Eurosceptic, pro-Russian, and want to limit the voting rights of Bulgarians abroad.
And to refer to that, what do you think are the main policy areas that these two parties can actually manage to find common ground and introduce new reforms?
There are very few, in fact, because GERB is a strongly pro-EU European party. It is one that advocates stimulating business. It is one that advocates moderate spending in the social sphere, but rather using other market mechanisms. And it certainly is not xenophobic and nationalist. Whereas the United Patriots, they expect to see increase in pensions. They expect to see limit on voting rights, as I mentioned, of Bulgarians abroad because they're against ethnic Turks coming from Turkey to vote. We also expect to see a push for strengthening ties with Russia as opposed to with the European Union. So the policy making would be the bigger problem. Doing the math in terms of parliamentary seats, it's okay because it just gives them just enough of a majority. But when we get to specific policy areas, it would be very, very difficult to find a common ground.
As you mentioned, relations with other countries and those two parties, GERB and the United Nationalists, can actually form a new government. What would be then the relationship of Bulgaria with its partners in the EU, the United States, and even Russia?
I do expect that we will pursue distinct pro-European and pro-EU policy. I think we would be careful in our relations with Turkey and with Russia, but I do not expect that the GERB party could really can afford to give in to pro-Russian attitudes and sentiments. So ultimately what needs to happen is we need to look out for the interest of Bulgaria and what is in Bulgaria's best interest. And I think the last 10 years of the European membership have proven that our best interest is to stay with Europe.
Definitely, we can all agree on that. And what do you think then should the approach be on the other side, on the east, in the Middle East? We see Erdogan rising with in Turkey and the referendum going on actually right now in Europe. What should be then the approach of Bulgaria towards Erdogan and the new government?
It's a very delicate situation for us because we could not afford to be overtly critical. Because it's a neighboring country, it's a country that hosts a lot of Bulgarian nationals and one with which we have a very long and not always peaceful history. But relationships between Bulgaria and Turkey have been peaceful, and in fact Turkey was the first country to support NATO membership for Bulgaria. So we need to make sure that we don't antagonize further the debate and we don't increase the gap between what are currently the relations between Turkey and the EU. Rather, I think that Bulgaria could probably serve as a bridge between Turkey and the European Union today and could maybe mediate this broken down dialogue.
Let's move back to the EU and talking about social policies and monetary policies. Should the new government make its priority that Bulgaria enters the Eurozone, and how would that affect Bulgarian citizens in the short and in the long term?
I think in the long run, absolutely, we should strive towards further integration. Further integration is the only way that Europe can be saved because it is currently under attack from populist parties and events such as Brexit. But we also need to keep in mind that Brexit is not something atypical for Britain, meaning that Britain was always a reluctant EU member, so it's the most logical country that is likely to turn away from that. And we need to not make this more than what it is, because East European countries have been enthusiastically pro-European in the past at least, and we have seen an enormous enlargement of the European Union. So rather than considering that the European Union is breaking apart because Britain is leaving, Britain didn't join until the 70s, and since then the European Union has grown tremendously. So what we need to consider is the long-term benefits for the country, and I do think that joining the Eurozone is such long-term benefit. At the same time, I think that in the short term this could be less advisable because we are likely to see speculation in prices, even though there is no financial logic to prices increasing when joining the European Union, especially given the fact that we're under a monetary currency board. I expect that prices may rise due to speculation. We saw this when the euro was first introduced. We also saw it in Slovenia and Slovakia, who introduced the euro. And I think that something like this could fuel the rhetoric of populists and Eurosceptics. So I don't think now is the time to be doing that, but some years, a couple of years down the road, absolutely.
And as Bulgaria will take the representation of the EU next year, what would you wish for Bulgaria and AUBG, and for our students, of course?
I would wish that Bulgaria prepares properly because we're behind schedule. But at least I think the government and all parties involved woke up, and they're doing some catching up and doing it very fast. So I'm more optimistic that I was some months ago. And I wish that this offers an opportunity for Bulgaria to make its voice heard, to raise some issues that are unique and important for Bulgaria, and to show a moderate approach and intelligent strategy and a vision for the European Union. And I think AUBG could also greatly benefit. We have our European Studies program, we have Model EU, and this is also a chance for us to get involved with the presidency. There'll be a lot of opportunities for volunteers. I hope our students get engaged and volunteer. So it could only bring us good things, I believe, but it will be awfully expensive for the country.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Provost Zankina. It was a pleasure to have you here as our first guest, and thank you very much, everybody, for watching, and till next time. Thank you.
Thank you, my pleasure.